Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Let me know. Hello, Gowd Cat. Nobody's replying, so I don't know if you can hear me. I assume you can see my lips moving, so anyone who can lip read, tell me if you can't hear me, or if you can hear me, or whatever. I'll check on Telegram if anyone's said anything. Not so far. I'm gonna start and hope that somebody will tell me if there's any problem. Let me check with one person. I wanted to look anyway at... I wanted to look at a bit of this FX stuff because myself, I'm slightly flummoxed by it at the moment. If you're in my FX channel and you saw my comment yesterday, not yesterday, Friday, about gold, which kind of goes across everything really, and it's mostly back to this DXY dollar index chart, which kind of drives, well, not drives, it kind of amalgamates indices, obviously, so therefore can give a good indication for the other US dollar pairs, obviously, as to what they're, so the pound dollar, and obviously euro dollar particularly, and dollar yen, as to what they may do overarchingly, and it can give you a bit of extra information. Still nobody's replying about whether they can hear me or not, so I'm hoping you can all hear me, since there's 6 people watching. Ah, yes, good, thank you. Confirmation that I can be heard, good. Yeah, so DXY, we have obvious, come on, I hope I'm not going to have speed issues now as well. Loud. Loud and clear, or just loud. Try and get this changed to the monthly, and I'm praying I'm not going to have speed issues. And let me just turn my heater off because I'm about to boil to death. So DXY's obviously come down into this monthly demand area, and my cursor's now frozen, which is great. And so obviously I've been looking for a kind of bounce here. We've had one, and it had some fairly decent moves last week, but not really what you'd expect coming off a monthly level. And obviously this is a monthly level in the middle of price action, like it's not at the start of it. Like the starts of the waves tend to be stronger. So if we came down here, and this is an annual level, then I would expect a very significant reaction. Ones in kind of in the middle of waves here, for me, aren't ideal. However, it is still a monthly level, so I would have expected something. And so far, we did get the bounce, and we did get a big, well, reasonable retracement off euro dollar, and pound dollar as well, but pound dollar bounced very, very strongly the next day. Then we've got a weekly demand here, and we've come back into that on Friday, and it really hasn't done much at all. I was expecting at least for a bounce off the top of it, but it bounced a bit early. There was a daily level in there as well, and this is all really choppy and nasty because it's been so much gapping lately with all the stimulus talks and things like that. A lot of these things happen on the weekends, and then we get all this gapping, and then the candles just look a mess. So it makes it hard to judge. But I wanted kind of a bounce off the top of this of reasonable size, but we didn't. We got one off the daily here, but we haven't really got much. We've got a 3-day here, which has already been tested once. And then I think there's a 12-hour in there. So there's still kind of hope that we might get a bit of a bounce through here, but we're still getting driven down a bit. And in the bigger picture on this, when we talk about sort of going for liquidity, we've got a swing failure off that first candle, but we've still got potentially the opportunity to get liquidity from below each of these orange lines, which is where I tend to place them, and then obviously for potentially a bigger drop. I've got a channel drawn in. The base is just parallel to the top, so again that gives us a bit of room for coming in a little bit lower here. So it's possible, you know, we got a much better bounce off this. So this has been the kind of the crux, and then the other thing we've got here is an inverse head and shoulders. So really this week we're looking for this to push up off here, but yeah, like I say, slightly tentative about whether that's actually going to happen because it's not showing the strength that I want at the moment. Again, we've got a daily supply here as well. I think there's also my blue, there's either a 12-hour or 8-hour in there. So yeah, anyway, it's kind of thinking about it at the moment. So if that happens and we can get a push, and it'll be quite interesting to see in the next few hours. When do we open? In 3 hours time, actually. Well, this will open a couple of hours later, but everything else opens in a few hours time, to see what gaps we may or may not get. And this, so unfortunately missed this trade, although it hasn't really played out in full anyway, but that's some trend line or something. But so on the euro, again, if you've been following my updates, you'll know, so obviously at the same time that DXY dropped into the monthly, this has come up into a monthly supply area, unsurprisingly. I think there was, yeah, so it's again a large area, but again, it hasn't rejected off the bottom of it, and I've got a feeling it didn't on the first hit either. I've removed the brown because just to overcomplicate it. Then there's a weekly a little higher, and we push up into that, and then we've got a daily again a bit higher, but again from a liquidity perspective we can potentially be going up to take out some of these highs further up, which is kind of the risk on whether this is a bigger short or not. We did get the short off the monthly level here, which I think I was posting about in the FX channels. And we have created weekly supply. Let me just hide some of this stuff. All my mess, I did actually clean up my charts, believe it or not. So it's again all a little bit uncertain. So we've come off, this is where I would have liked to have taken the short right off the bottom of that weekly supply. So what you tend to find is that when you've got a major supply or demand area, you'll get an initial hit off it that will take you some distance and possibly just back into whatever the nearest demand is. But that can give you, and it may then subsequently push back up and come a lot higher, or even take out the highs, particularly because we're in overall a bullish uptrend, obviously. But you will obviously normally get an initial reaction that you can trade straight off, and they're a bit tough because you don't want to put your stop all the way up here and then get 0.1R or something off it. Yeah, you can normally get a low time frame entry, and that's kind of what I was looking for, but I was indisposed last week, so I couldn't trade that on Thursday, I think it was. On this, again, we've broken weekly demand. We did come off kind of close to the top of it with this candle anyway. We've broken it, but only with a swing failure, so again, it's kind of still up in the air. We haven't had a proper close below it. Nor has it been rejected. I think it might have been rejected again lower time frame as an indirect supply through here, but again is now coming back up again. So still, obviously, this is clearly still in a bullish uptrend, and even it would have to break below this whole thing in order for it to be considered a sort of major down move. So back down here, we've got monthly demand, and that's kind of where I was hoping to target, so a short off that weekly supply back down into monthly demand. But it's not as certain as I would really like it to be. Let's go down and have a look at the lower time frames, daily. And so in addition to that, I'm going to take that off, I don't know what that is. In addition to that, we've got daily demand here as well now. So it's one thing if you go straight back up into it. So yeah, we did get the rejection off the daily here for a short there, and then we've retesting again, and we're back up in this weekly supply. So again, I kind of want to see where this opens. Overall still bullish, however, signs of potentially breaking down, but nothing properly really confirmed yet. We've got the 3-day supply here, so we could certainly push up to the purple line, and again I'll be looking for a short there. And then we've also got a 4-hour kind of within it further up, and obviously a bunch of extra possible rejection areas higher. So like lower time frame, you can see, so we got that rejection straight off the weekly there, which would have been nice for a short. And I then spent the rest of Thursday and Friday watching it, or maybe it was Friday this hit, 22nd, yeah. I then spent the rest of Friday watching it, wondering if it was going to get a bigger move down. But Friday, everything really just kind of stagnated. We kind of came off the 4-hour here, went straight back up again, and then just stagnated in this little area for the rest of the day. So it was fairly useless, and I didn't want to go into a trade and hold it over the weekend without a stop because of the spread widening. You'd have to remove your stops and also then get charged money for holding. It's not worth it. So what I'm looking for is where we open. Do we gap up? Do we gap down? Ideally for a rejection somewhere in this area. I mean, Asia's been a bit more productive than it has been previously. So where was last Monday? 17th. So Asia actually took us down and then rebounded us, and then we basically went up for the rest of the week. So again, another common thing is if we have a whole week going up, there's a fair chance we'll have some retracement. From an Elliott perspective, we've got this move down, retrace some of the move, and then take another move further down. It's kind of what I'm looking for. May or may not be correct in that, and the problem is, like I say, it's exactly how high we'd go. But yeah, those are the key areas I'd be looking for rejection anyway, whether or not we can get past this weekly at all, and particularly if we swing fail here, if we swing fail this level into the 3-day, I think we've had enough pushing up now such that unless we are actually going to go higher, it's unlikely we're going to start trying to take out these highs, but I could be wrong. Anyone who's unfamiliar with trading Forex, the swing failures are pretty much the best thing you can trade as a new trader, because they give you a very, very tight entry and stop loss. And if it's violated, you're out of the trade, it's done, or you'll get a very, very high R trade. So I think there's a great deal more to say about that. Shout if you have any questions, by the way. I can read the chat, so if you want to ask anything. Yeah, so what I was saying on this was just what I was watching the rest of Friday, and it was kind of chopping around. And again, I would have been looking at shorting in this hourly if it hadn't been coming into the close for the week. And now really this is basically just a triangle, isn't it? So it's just going to resolve whichever way it kind of chooses to resolve tomorrow or later today, depending on what time zone you're in. And I don't want to be really trading long into such high time frame supply. Again, rightly or wrongly, but trades are trades, and from my style of trading, I don't want to be yeah, longing into a high time frame supply or shorting into a high time frame demand, which makes it slightly challenging. So yeah, shorting up here, long possibly down on this daily. But you run the risk. So if we have reverse direction, then this isn't going to hold. But that's still quite a big if at this stage. Pound. I'll get onto the US dollar, dollar yen and dollar CAD as well, because they then confuse the situation slightly further. Pound, again, as you know, if you've been following me, I was like through here and here, I was hoping for the hit on this monthly level up here, and we haven't got it, and we still haven't got it. So this is the other thing that makes me slightly nervous about being short biased, is that I really would like this pound to also be hitting. Like the main other thing I look for is everything to hit at the same time, and this hasn't hit. I drew this blue in, which is a 12-hour, just so I could see what we had slightly below. I did actually get the short off the top of it as well, but only from a low time frame perspective. But again, this is still bullish uptrend. If you can see in amongst my trillions of lines, we came off weekly twice, and we had a really good strong push off that as well. We've closed above here. I can delete that because I think I was just looking to see if we closed above the 3-day level. So again, we've closed above this, so there's no sign of this being in a bigger drop scenario as yet. However, if we get a push up to this monthly, that's when you really should be looking for potentially a significant move down. Will it come all the way down to this monthly? Possibly. I wouldn't go quite that far, at least on a lower time frame. I think I'll take some of this old stuff off. I trade low time frame on these charts as well, so I tend to end up with a complete mess by the end of the week, which I then have to delete at the weekends. So yeah, still in kind of breakout. Hasn't obviously held over the top green line, but has held over this high on the 3-day and the weekly, and would be looking potentially for a push into this monthly and then some sort of decent drop, because that's a fairly well-defined monthly. May only come down to, I might just put that weekly in actually, may only come down to here, but still significant move if you're day trading, scalping. And on the daily, we've got some demand down here. So with a bit of luck, we can at least get moved from there down to the daily, or that the bigger drop. But again, really, this reminds me of the SPX and the DJI. They're just sort of in this perpetual uptrends and don't seem to want to do anything different. So yeah, strictly, I mean, even on this, strictly, you should still be trading longs, but whilst being very conscious that we're coming into this big monthly area, and which is quite well defined off that candle, and it hasn't been hit yet. So I would expect a reaction there, and so hence why that makes this typically, in fact, actually, for a bit of last week, the euro was driving a lot of this movement. So when I say the euro was driving it, I mean, normally you will see if euro US dollar goes up, then pound US dollar goes up, and Aussie US dollar goes up, and the dollar is driving it. That's actually more common. However, for part of the end of last week, we also saw a big bounce on the euro pound, and that was so as the euro was going. So it was the euro strength that was driving the move up on the euro dollar, not the dollar weakness. So, and again, you'll normally get them opposite. So these three tend to run opposite to each other. One of the pound pairs will follow the euro US dollar, and the other one will go the opposite direction. And so when you find also euro US dollar stagnating like this, it's sometimes also because the pound pairs are sort of normalizing themselves or getting themselves to wherever they need to be in conjunction. from like, it's obviously because you can't be arbitraging currencies to, or traditional currencies to the same extent as we do in crypto. So the other thing to ascertain whether the pound dollar is reaching wherever you want it to reach, is going to reverse at that monthly level or reverse now, is whether this euro pound is reaching support. And again, this is a tough one. Really, this is clearly a breakdown on the weekly and probably on the monthly as well. So the monthly obviously hasn't quite closed yet, but if the monthly closes below here, then we're really looking at a bigger breakdown. If that's the case, then the pound US dollar is going to go up. From a weekly perspective, again, you can see this has got that's a monthly level in the brown, but you can see this is a fairly clear sort of support level through there that's been broken and is being retested. The actual weekly supply up that is up there. So again, if that's the case, be looking for shorts there. But I just want to see. I think I just need a few more days in this week. I'm probably not being very helpful for anybody new to this. I hope you're understanding where I'm kind of coming from on this, because I'm looking at the correlation between the pairs. But yeah, this should hit resistance at the same time as the pound dollar hits support. And it's kind of, they're both a bit in limbo at the moment, and they're both looking at hitting resistance. And they can all go down together. It's possible, but it's unusual. Because normally you won't find a sort of weakness across the board in everything alongside everything, at least not in my experience anyway. So I'd be looking for this to push up to here, which would then mean this has to drop. From a lower time frame perspective, we do have sort of what looks potentially more like could end up being a reversal pattern. So we've got a 3-day demand through there. And I should say, even though this has broken down, we are in a monthly level. We are wicking heavily off this monthly level. We've come a bit lower into it, so there is no reason this can't go up. But obviously just being very conscious that it has broken support. And also I'll get onto the Aussie pairs as well, and you'll see the euro Aussie dollar has just been looking like death. But again, is at that possible rebound kind of point. So this made a 3-day demand, looking at weekly supply above. So yeah, be looking at a short there and a long from the 3-day on this, depending on what I see, particularly with any gapping that we're going to get tomorrow. Computer frozen again. And we've already got that retest of the 3-day there. There's another thing you find, that even if it hasn't, okay, this is just weird. This is, yeah, this something I've noticed on TradingView recently is that you can see this is closed up here. So the close of the 3-day is 89,186. Daily the same. 12-hour close 88,978. So I have found there can be some anomalies in TradingView data on the higher time frames recently. So this has already tested the 3-day, just to throw me off completely. And I might have to wait until even the candles open tomorrow just to have that fix itself or do whatever it wants to do. But yeah, this is certainly looking like it could bounce up with the open, which would then mean that this is going to drop. And I think this was already in the process of dropping. It had dropped some, and again, I was looking for a retest of the 4-hour for potential move back down to this 4-hour on the lower time frame on this. So really, like I say, with this, I'm not trying to predict. like I was, one of the reasons again I wanted to do this stream is I was watching some of what other people were saying, and I see a lot of people do like this kind of stuff, and I'm never quite sure if they know something I don't or whether they're guessing. I'm going with guessing for the moment because to be fair, I haven't followed them enough to judge whether they're actually right when they say that. But I find it quite hard so particularly in an uptrend like this, I don't know if somebody would actually put that exact prediction in, but for example, I think it's one thing to say in an uptrend like this that we're going to come down and test the daily and then break out and ignore this, but there's a lot of there seem to be a lot of assumptions that other analysts do that we're going to break this or that, whereas for me, I'd kind of rather see the reaction when we get there and trade level to level. And there are obviously different time frames, but certainly within, like, you wouldn't necessarily say a 1 hour time frame on the supply side is going to break a daily demand, but I'm not going to say we're going to break a 4 hour and then a daily demand level in a bullish uptrend. I can see it might be coming because we've got the monthly, we're coming into the monthly, we've got a W top here, we had a W top there, but then we still came higher. And the reason I said look for the swing failures as well is, again, you had clear swing failures here and here, and no, it didn't go all the way down, it still has come back higher, but it's a safe trade. So if you see candles like this, and you can go down to the lower time frames and use hourly or 15-minute or even 1 minute, but if you see those happen at the start of Asia, at the start of New York or the start of London, you can be fairly confident that you're going to get some sort of significant move down into demand in the other direction, demand in this case. And they are relatively safe trades you can take. I mean, strictly you should do it when the candle closes, so you would just enter immediately on the open of this candle, but then your stop's a long way up, so it's up to you how you choose to trade them and how soon you want to go in. Obviously the sooner. So I think this one actually went over, where am I looking at here? I did get into this one. I think I did get stopped out and then went back in again. The 15-minute did close slightly over, and I think I went in too early, which I have a tendency to do. But again, you get a significant move off that, and that happened at, what's that, 6:45. That's actually the sort of pre-New York, so that's a little early for that kind of move to happen. Anyway, that's an aside. Higher time frame. So the TLDR version, if this hits monthly, I'll be looking for a short. At the moment, still bullish uptrend, so you should be long biased over and above everything else. On the euro pound aspect, which should go the opposite direction to that, we are seeing a bounce off a 3-day demand, and while we can come lower into that as a big 3-day demand area, this could potentially at least be bullish for a couple of days, in which case we may see some sort of further retracement on this, at least down and possibly down into the daily before going up to the monthly. And the euro TLDR version, really just seeing what we're seeing where this opens. If I see a swing failure off this high and into that monthly level, that would be a definite short for me tomorrow. The pound Aussie dollar is worth talking about. I haven't traded this for a while because this has quite wide spreads compared to some of the other ones, and because I like to go in and scalp really tight entries, I prefer not to. But however, this has actually given some really good trades this week that I've just kind of been watching out of the corner of my eye, so I think is worth keeping an eye on. Really nice swing failure off the lows there, and even I foolishly didn't trade that. I have no idea why, because I was actually watching it as it happened, thinking, oh, if that swing fails off the lows, that could be a really decent move. Yeah, so it had done a bounce there, and then it came down, significant move up, and you could have just got in on the retracement there. Then we had I believe a 12-hour. It just had some really clean structure, and this is the kind of structure you're looking at. So rather than faffing around with the intricacies of the structure like I've just described on the pound and the euro, when you see something like this, it's a really clean 12-hour supply candle straight off there. And then again, this next level, I think this is a daily, and then we've got a 3-day slightly higher again, really, really clean. Well, it came off on the first one, went down into demand, and then did a swing failure for a second one and a bigger move down. And the taking profit is always the hardest bit of this for me. But so long as I can get in an entry that is safe, such that I can move my stock to break even really pretty quickly, then I'm quite happy. So this one was where it came off that first 12-hour that I was talking about and went down into the first clean 4-hour that we had. So this is demand, but it was messy. So we faffed around here a bit and then came cleanly off the 4-hour demand. And then went up into this, well, initially did a swing failure off that previous high. So again, another trade into what was then subsequently a daily demand, and then up into the daily supply area for another rejection down into the 4-hour demand. So again, it's just been quite clean on the higher time frames. And now, so bigger picture on this, I haven't really looked at as yet. Overall, this I think isn't even remotely bullish, and this is not dissimilar in structure to the euro pound. We've got quite a lot going on here. So we've got, I haven't even charted this properly. Well, I've actually got this chart on two different layouts, so I might have charted it better on the other one. So we've got 3 months demand down the bottom here, which is not updating. 3 months demand down there and 3 months supply here. So this is clearly, again, since the COVID bounce, had a fairly significant drop. Also when we'll get onto the Aussie dollar in a minute, but the Aussie US is now looking like it's looking more like a retracement than the euro and the pound are yet, or a bigger correction, which would then mean this potentially has this bigger bounce. So unfortunately, we haven't quite come down to this sort of 3-month demand area. We do have also 2 months demand in here. Line out. And that's it. So again, I'd like to see really this come a bit lower, but we are seeing this fairly significant wicking off here. So no, we haven't got down to the monthly areas yet. There's nothing on the monthly itself. Well, this is a sort of big monthly area here. And we're also sort of seeing multiple retests, a bit like, again, the euro pound, kind of weekly demand, but it's hit once, it's hit twice, it's hit 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and it's getting lower and lower into it. We've also got possibility of swing failures lower on here, or sorry, picking up liquidity lower off some of the bottoms of some of these wicks. We have taken some of them, but not as many as that could be taken before a significant move up. So at the moment, we're still looking at this as a downtrend anyway, again, whilst being between a rock and a hard place in high time frame demand and supply. So on the 2-week, let's get rid of some of this stuff. 2-week demand, we've also made 2-week supply. And again, unless we're going to get a wholesale reversal of everything, looking for a short, probably quite soon, coming in tomorrow. I won't look too much about what's going on up there now. If we do push higher, then we'd be looking for a swing failure off the top of this high into the monthly before that bigger drop back down into the monthly. But you know, overall, this is clearly a downtrend flattening off, and then you would expect another wave down, really. I think on this, don't think there's much else to report. Trend line, always worth watching. Trend lines, I think, for me in FX on the high time frames, I find basically pretty much useless. Low time frames I actually find much more useful if you're late into a trade and you don't get the top or the swing failure, top or bottom or the swing failure, then you can use low time frame trend lines. But high time frame, I tend to find that they'll break them and then just come straight back in again, a bit like Bitcoin, and not very much use. But again, so 2 weekly level here, this is respecting levels quite well. The problem is it's quite big. And again, I don't like to take these with a stop all the way up here. We've also got a weekly up here that hasn't been retested. So we've had a 3-day that was retested, rejected, made a weekly, has not been retested. So again, another possibility for a short would be up at 1.8. But that's potentially only after time if we still see things, if we're seeing things significantly start reversing. So I guess for most of what I'm looking for next week is just whether I see these areas that we're coming into on pretty much every pair hold, or whether I start to see them break. If I start to see them break, then I'm going to start thinking this is a wholesale kind of reversal of everything. And then we would expect to see DXY bounce and go significantly higher. And a lot of these that have been coming down for indefinite periods of time. Oh, this is still a double bottom here. But until we get past kind of the neckline of the double bottom, as people like to call it, it's not confirmed, nor really anything. Assuming this isn't giving me a furphy with a closing daily candle. We have weekly that we're in, double bottom, daily. So it is possible that we get a rejection off this 2 week, and we're going to bounce around in here before it decides whether it's going to come up higher into the 2 week or drop down lower. Let's look at what the 4 hours doing. But like I say, this is fairly nice and clean. A 4 hour in there. It's already been hit twice. So we would do expect a little push up at least to this 3-day level. And another 4 hour up there. So what I'm really doing with all of these is just looking for possibilities that we're going to see a reaction. And then some of them I'll just trade blindly, and others I'll wait for the low time frame. So from this sort of educational perspective, really just looking for high time frame areas of supply and demand, where we're coming from, where we're going to. And unfortunately, yeah, there's a bit of a lack of clarity because a lot of these haven't quite gone. Like if this had gone to the monthly, I'd be much more bullish about the prospect of us breaking this weekly and the 3-day, but we haven't. Yes, we've got a double bottom. Yes, we're in a weekly, but we haven't quite got down to this monthly area, so it could still be heading that way. And it is still an overarching downtrend. So we've just got to be conscious of all that. The yen. So again, if we're going to see DXY bounce and go higher, and the euro, dollar, and pound dollar come lower, then we need this to go higher. And again, you can see from this, I was looking at this just kind of blank chart. Obviously, it's been going down for the whole of 2020. So to then just sort of suddenly say, but this is the first time that we've actually, you can see throughout here, I think this is what I wanted to show when I was looking at this the other day. Drop, retest the origin of the drop, faff around a bit, drop more, retest the origin of the drop, faff around a bit, drop more, retest the origin of the drop. At this point, we do break some more high time frame supply. And I remember when this happened, this was I think a single day candle, that I was a bit like, oh, okay, is this a reversal? And I think it was at the point that DXY hit the top of the monthly level, and we got this significant move, but then it's just kind of faffed around and come back down again. But until we break the most recent down move, and obviously you can choose whatever time frame you want to put that on, because if you look at this on the weekly, it hasn't broken the weekly down move, whereas if you look at it on a 3-day, it has. So it depends. It depends on what time frame you're trading and all that sort of thing as to what you consider having broken the last. But for me, I look at the waves. So this is a clear wave up and a clear drop, and then it's come back and it's tested close to the origin of that wave, and then it's still dropping lower. Same here, it's dropped, retested, dropped, retested, dropped. What we do have now, though, again on the 3-day, is we've come higher, and it's similar to this, that we've managed to break the most recent. I think it's not a 3-day there, it's a daily or a 2-day, but we've broken the last down move and we're coming back to the retest. So when you're looking at those reversals, you're looking for it to break the last down move on whatever time frame you define, but then it's got to survive the retest. So this here broke the last down move but didn't survive the retest. You would have expected it to bounce at this level and then continue up if that's what it was going to do, and it didn't survive. It came all the way back down to the outset and then just died from there. So again, what we're looking at here is it's broken this last down move and we're looking at the retest. But then this is probably the what I was explaining about the DXY earlier. If DXY had bounced off that weekly level, then we would have seen this bounce sooner. But as it stands, it's kind of coming back down. So let me put my things back on. But again, didn't quite come as low as I would have wanted. So the daily indirect demand is kind of where you would be looking for the bounce, and it bounced slightly too high, which has just thrown me off again. So a lot of this stuff is just throwing me off, and hence why I want to kind of see what's going on at the start of this week. What I will say, though, from a liquidity perspective, so we've got this yen has come back down into monthly demand. We've got this horrible wick that goes right through the middle of it. And again, I don't have enough experience in FX to know whether that really negates this whole supply area down to the bottom of the wick. And it could, we talk about it filling liquidity gaps, and this was the COVID dump. So a lot of people would say that this is going to retrace right back down to the start, or at least to have put quite low at the start of this up move, which obviously we haven't quite got to yet. We're kind of close. So we're just kind of at that point of indecision. I've got this monthly, got a weekly inside it, or I think a 2-weekly that is. And again, on this, I was looking for the close, and I haven't updated this since the weekly close, but we have, same as the DXY, unsurprisingly, this weekly demand, which we've dipped quite heavily into. So I wanted it to go down to the daily within it, which we haven't quite got to. And we're still creating high time frame supply above. So I'm still, again, quite on the fence as to whether this is still a downtrend. And I don't know, now I'm saying all this, and again, like I say, this is part of the reason I wanted to do this because it helps me think things through, if by talking about them. Now I'm actually thinking through all of this. I don't think the dollar's ready to bounce yet, I think, is what it boils down to. This hasn't, unless everything's been front run, which is again possible. This I wanted to come lower. Euro and pound dollar, I wanted to go a bit higher. Euro pound, I wanted to go a bit low. Like, everything hasn't quite got to where I would have wanted it to get to. So, and I haven't really done this on the high time frames before. So when I look at low time frames, and I don't know if I'll be able to, I probably wouldn't be able to illustrate it properly now, but certainly when I look at the low time frames on when I'm trading, for example, in London, I'm looking at the pound dollar and the euro pound. I look for this to come to support at the same time as this gets to resistance. and then I know they're both going to reverse together, at least on the low time frames. However, I'm not, like, I have seen it on occasion, they will both go down at the same time as each other. But it is quite rare. Like, from a macro perspective, I think they can both go down together. But if you look at the smaller waves within, you will see each up move on the pound dollar is matched by a down move on the euro pound, but the magnitude may be different, such that overall they're both going down or both going up. Hope that makes some sort of sense. So anyway, yeah, now I'm thinking about this, I still feel we've got room for the dollar to go lower and to get weaker. But we trade what we see. So whilst keeping that in mind, room for this to go lower, room for the euro pound to go higher, the euro dollar to go higher, and then potentially then get the bigger bounce. But oh yeah, maybe I'd be looking for this to come down into the daily tomorrow or Tuesday, and then go for the bigger move up. The only thing is that then alternatively can make the DXY quite bearish, as the DXY is gonna the DXY is already quite heavily into the weekly. It's still possible. I don't know why my computer's flashing around, but if this is a head and shoulders, we've still got the possibility of going down to the level of this. Ideally you want it to bounce a bit higher, but we don't have any proper retests. This wasn't retested down here. And as I again repeat myself overarchingly, all I'm looking for at the moment, the dollar is in a downtrend. I'm just trying to establish whether it might be reversing. And obviously we've got signs that it might be, but until it really breaks this down move, there's no sign that it's reversing on a high time frame. So that's the yen anyway. Yen and CAD, like the pound Aussie dollar, have also had some really clean trades, so keep an eye on those. So you can see here, 4-hour wick straight into it, drop. There's another 4-hour here. This went a bit higher into it, but also there was a 3-day for the confluence of the larger 3-day that it came off before dropping lower. It's had some really clean trades lately, and again you can see on Friday we came off the 4-hour quite cleanly. It just didn't have time to go very far before the week ended. So up here, and that's also, there was the other reason why I was getting thrown off. I feel like everyone's really quiet. Let me just check that nobody's saying anything about this stream being dead and I'm talking to myself. No. So yeah, I think this was the other thing that was throwing me off on Friday, and again why I didn't really want to trade it. So we had, like I said, they had this hitting resistance, so US dollar hitting resistance, but then concurrently, or near enough concurrently, we had the euro dollar hitting resistance. And again, I don't want them both hitting resistance at the same time, because that throws me off, because the dollar is unlikely, I'm very unlikely to get the euro dollar going up while the dollar yen goes up too, or vice versa. So, and again, maybe why this hung around here for a while, I'm not sure what the timing was. So that was at 5 o'clock. Sorry, I'm in Perth time on this computer still. So that was 5 o'clock on Friday, and this was a bit later. This was 10 o'clock. So yeah, so 5 o'clock we were down here. So that's what I mean. So we were going, while we were going up here, euro US dollar was at least coming down a bit, although it was faffing around. So again, this being at resistance at the same time as dollar yen is at resistance is a confusing scenario for me anyway. And you see dollar CAD, I think, is pretty much the same scenario. This has also been a pretty much a dream to trade recently, and I should have been trading it. I've kind of been kicking myself a little bit for not trading this a higher time frame, because I've had some really good entries, but I haven't been holding them, and then I just see the price go miles in the same direction. So again, this is still in that bigger downtrend. We again didn't quite go as low as I would have wanted to. I think there was a 2-day on this. We do have a fairly clean, this was probably the only one that I didn't mind so much. We had a fairly clean 2-day demand here, although again preference would have been to go into the weekly, because we're coming down off such a major again, we've got such a major downtrend, so you would kind of want it to bounce on sort of a fairly decent demand. So I'm not sure if the 2 days enough, but we had a nice clean and decent move off the 2-day. But yeah, this wick was a little bit random, swing failure, but off that kind of random wick that I wouldn't necessarily have considered. We now have this weekly supply as well, but we've had 3 hits on it. So again, and it's coming up again off this demand for the 3rd hit on Friday. So is it reversing? Possibly. But again, just really, it's been really nice, clean supply hits. Let me just try and find the time frames. I think this one I wanted a little bit higher. We didn't get quite as high as I wanted, and therefore I didn't actually manage to trade that myself. But this dropped, retested, dropped again, retested, just a lot of local retests. And then when we actually got below the weekly, this is a retest into a fairly clean 4-hour for the bigger drop. Came back up again. Like I say, this didn't get quite as high as I would have wanted, but still a reasonable supply area. But this has been, yeah, again, quite clean. Another one, swing failure off this 4-hour level. I think, yeah, I got in early on that again, and it pinged me, and then I got in again and did get that, but I only took it down to here. So I was kind of kicking myself a little bit, but because it was a 4-hour, because I trade level to level, and there was a 4-hour demand here, and we did get a kick off that, but it was only, I think, into, yeah, it was just into an hourly level before again the really significant drop the next day, which was a day I was busy, so rather annoyingly. So again, decent push off the 2-day, and now we're back up in daily supply. So, or not daily, 12-hour, nope, 8-hour, yes, 8-hour and 4-hour. So again, would expect to drop off this, would expect to drop off the yen, and maybe that means that that triangle on euro US dollar is going to break higher before it comes down. I hope I'm not confusing you too much, or more than I'm confusing myself anyway. But I think a lot of the reason for this is the situation is quite unclear. I do want to, I won't do this all on the stream now, or we'll be here all night, but I do want to run through some of the others. The other one that's been a dream, and again, I messed up trading myself, which I was angry with myself about, was the euro yen. And this I can give you quite a good example of me being a dick. But so euro yen, we had this weekly, and it wasn't confirmed, so I was just watching it, so you can see that it's now been confirmed, although we've closed up inside it. But I was watching it because things happen before things are confirmed, and I shorted here. I had a great short entry, really great, but then again I faffed around with it, and that is an error I make at times. And in this particular instance, we had 1, 2, 3 hits, and it never went higher. So if I'd actually left my stop alone, I think I moved my stop to break in. So, and there was also a swing failure. So we had, not only we had this hit of this unconfirmed weekly, we had 4-hour level here. We had a swing failure off the top of the 4-hour, right underneath this unconfirmed weekly. We had come off this, not really a demand area. So yes, we did come off the top. It was a kind of a support area based on these 2 wicks. So we'd come off that, but I was still expecting potentially a move lower, which actually we haven't got. But I thought we would get a significant move off here, and we did, but it took 2 days, and my level of patience faded dismally, and I ended up moving my stop too tight. I was kind of, I think I was annoyed with myself for not having taken profit here, watched it come back on me, then watched it come back on me again and got scared, so moved my stop to break even. And because the spreads on this, I think 2.5 with my broker, my stop, I literally just got stopped out on the wick there right before this happened. So I was very irritated with myself. Anyway, so it's come down into hourly and it's gone back up again and has potentially rejected at this point. But again, yeah, I haven't traded this. I was drawing it, but I was irritated with it. I don't try not to trade things when I'm irritated with them. Or should I say irritated with myself more than anything else. But either way, this is a really nice trade, which would have been if I hadn't messed it up. Now we're back again in this weekly level. We have closed fairly significantly below, although have ended the week strongly. So this is what I meant about this. So the euro was getting stronger towards the end of the week. We had the bounce on the euro yen, we had a bounce on euro cad, we had a bounce on euro pound. So it was the euro getting stronger and the US dollar kind of staying stagnant for the end of last week. But again, so now back in this weekly supply, which is now confirmed. So again, I am now potentially looking for the bigger drop on this back down to either the weekly down here or the 3-day. But again, just to be awkward, this, although we got a swing failure off that wick, didn't quite hit the monthly. And that's why I'm thrown off by a lot of these, because it's swing failure off that wick, swing failure off all of these. Excuse me. But didn't quite hit monthly supply. So these are all things to keep in mind. Like, I'm not giving you any really solid trades here because I do want to see what happens for the next couple of days and whether these are going to start trying to push up higher. Because again, still in a bullish uptrend, although potentially coming to the end of it. But it still has got the big double bottom. We've come off a big monthly level down here. And we're retracing. Let me have a look at where we are. So we're retracing this big down move. But we might need some significant news. Why isn't that okay? So yeah, the monthly would take us, the 61.8 would take us into the monthly and into this weekly in here. So again, yeah, like I say, I'm not really giving you any calls here, but it just for those who are learning from educational purposes, you're just looking for reactions on these levels. Like, you don't have to say, you know, that this is going to, let me find a little arrow or brush. You know, I don't have to go, right, this is going to reject here and it's going to come down to here and then it's going to go up to the monthly and then we're going to go lower, or then we're going to go up to the monthly and then we're going to retest here and we're going to go higher. Like, my aim is not to predict where price is going. My aim is simply to say, I think there will be a reaction at this level, to trade whatever reaction I see, ideally on the lower time frames, so I can get a better R off it. Not always going to be right. But if you trade the higher time frames, so like you can see here, there was a weekly level, but this, I don't know what happened in the lower time frames here, but this candle went up and did a swing failure above the weekly. So if you tried to trade this down here with the stop up here, you would have been stopped out. Well, that would have been not the world's best trade anyway, because the stop's far too far away. But from a high time frame perspective, this weekly supply wouldn't have worked for the most part, because you were coming off a monthly down here. But they're not always going to work, but you do normally off the high time frame see some sort of reaction, at least on the lower time frames. So like I say here, this weekly wasn't even confirmed, but I was aware that it was there, and as soon as I started to see, I saw the swing failure off the 4 hour and I started to see this, if you ignore the fact I got nervous and should have held on to the damn thing, that had the requisite reaction and it went all the way down. And this was a lovely run as well. So the other thing to look for, the other thing you're looking for is this. You know, there are no red candles, there is no demand in there. So we had this demand up here, which is why we did get the bounce initially, and then it tried to hold, and then it came for a second go, and then did the drop. But through here, there's nothing for it to bounce on. And you contrast that with something like pound US dollar, which was just, what's my broker? Forex.com and Oanda. I was using Forex.com for ages. I like their margin requirements, but then they started to irritate me because they keep wanting to approve any money you put in, and it takes them a day to do it, and I keep having to harass them because I'm very impatient. And Oanda, it'll happen in a split second, but Oanda, the margin requirements are more stringent. So I don't want to look at euro US dollar. I was trying to show you a comparison. So on this, in contrast, you look at this thing, red, 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 red. So even when I was shorting this, I had no idea where to exit. I wanted to exit on this 4 hour, but it bounced on some random, but it's got all these hourly levels all the way up, and you don't know where it's going to bounce. And so you don't therefore taking profits hard, and I think I actually took profit on this here anyway. So I'm not happy I have profit. I've got no problem with that, but in something like that, it makes it a lot harder. Whereas you contrast that with euro yen, and this is what you're looking for. You're looking for a green stretch or a single green candle, like that dollar yen when it did that big bounce. Where was the dollar yen bounce? It's quite a long way back now. This crazy candle, so yeah, it tries a couple of times, but then and it did try and bounce on the way down, but this was going to retrace the whole thing because there were market makers who were trapped. So a lot of people talk about market makers as people who move the market, which is not the case. Market makers are there to provide liquidity. So what happens when this happens is that market makers are trapped. They've had longs and shorts both in here, and the price moves up, and their shorts are obviously massively underwater. So at some stage you expect the price to retrace to be able to allow the market makers to get out, but they don't move this price, they're just providing liquidity. Arguably you could say they're moving it to then get it back so they can get out, but that's why you tend to find price coming back to where it starts from after these big moves. But that's kind of what you want to look for, because then the price doesn't know where to bounce, and that's when you're likely to get your bigger moves and your bigger the easier, same here, big red move down, and then it's coming up at the start of that, the origin of that move. Something like this is a bit harder because you're like, well, it could reject here and it could reject here, and you probably, if you follow me on actually, it's probably more my premium group that see it on the Bitcoin stuff, it's not dissimilar on Bitcoin, which at the moment has been so choppy, and because I give those, as most people know, give those entries with arrow, I'm basically then looking at sort of going like this. Well, there's an entry there, and then there's another hourly here, and then there's another hourly here, and it makes it quite hard to then choose where to enter, and you're trying to look at fib confluence and all that sort of stuff, or if there's any higher time frame demand or supply. Whereas if you're seeing a big move like this, there's nowhere for it to bounce. It's just going to come back down to the start, and in this case go lower. So yeah, that's that. So yeah, euro yen has been really nice, and euro CAD has been similar. Aussie, the Aussie dollar, that's what I was going to look at, wasn't I? Dollar yen I haven't been trading as well, so I tried to avoid trading the things with the higher spreads, although Oanda, the spreads are actually a lot better, I had noticed, than Forex.com for quite a few of the ones that I had been avoiding trading a little bit, because like I say, if I'm coming in here with like a 5 pip stop, then I don't really want 2 of those pips to be spread, or 3 or 4, because then that doesn't give me the R I want, and the tightness of the entry that I want. particularly if you're coming in, like for example on here, if you came in here for a swing failure, it didn't go very far. So what's that? 79.81 to 79.53. So that's, it's not 30 pips, is it? I don't know how it works with pips on when you've got 79. But it's, i.e. it's not very far anyway, and if your spread is then half of that, it's kind of pointless. Anyway, I don't really trade Aussie yen. So let's not look at that. Let's just go to Aussie dollar quickly, because that I do want to look at. That even, and the Kiwi dollar is doing again. So the Aussie dollar and the Kiwi dollar should do the same thing, and they have been again slightly disparate lately, which I haven't really liked very much. So where are we on this? So we did have this enormous annual, which we've just come heavily up into, so I don't even really count that anymore. And there's not really, it's just chop. We're making some decent indirect demand down here, so if we do retrace, we've got some decent bounce points through here, and there's a couple of annual levels in there as well at the 71, 72s. So I don't actually see this going significant. I mean, it's been coming down for so damn long anyway. It's about time. So I think because Australia has had so few problems with COVID compared to the rest of the world, that's a lot of the reason we've had this big move up. So here we're in a 2-month supply area, as denoted by that brown line, but we're kind of right in the middle of it again. So we have been pushing into these monthly supplies, but again, it's a bit messy. I think we did get a rejection off this one, but it was only low time frame. So then I've been down on the weekly. So this is the sort of the first clearest, why that's low, clearest weekly, but even then there's still quite a lot of chop going on here. So haven't loved trying to predict where the top of the Aussie dollar is going to be either, the Aussie to the dollar. But it does again give decent reaction. So from watching perspective, even though this weekly has overlapped and got a big wick through it, we have still rejected really nicely, and that's why you just need to be watching these levels. Like, you don't have to trade every single one of them, and you certainly don't want to be trading it with your stop all the way up here, but always watch when you see these things coming into weekly or monthly levels, because invariably, like, I don't know, I'd say 70% of the time they're getting some sort of a reaction, which is tradable. And if you get stopped, you get stopped. You're managing a risk. It's not a problem. And so what we had here, we came up into the weekly, we rejected, we made a 3-day, and now we've come off the 3-day. So that's why I say this was looking at still obviously a big uptrend, but this was showing more of the possibility of the US dollar getting stronger than the euro and the pound have as yet. But again, still in a very strong uptrend, and we still certainly can't say that this is going to suddenly drop down to 72 or anything like that. Again, I wanted it down on this weekly for the bounce, but we didn't get that, so I still think it's potentially going to head in that direction. I'm going to move some of my mess off here again. Would like to see a test down here, and I would certainly be longing a test of this level. We've got that, and we've got a 3-day and daily down there. You'd be looking, for, this is a clean weekly level, you'd be looking for a bounce there, and then second to that, you'd be looking for a bounce off the 3-day, which also hasn't been tested down there. But we're likely to still see a bit of chop up here first, come off that 3-day quite nicely, now down in a 12-hour level. How does that fit with my other hypothesis? So the possibility of this then doing a little bit of a retest retracement tomorrow is fairly high, and that would potentially push the euro and the pound up a little bit higher as well. I think we could see the US dollar getting a bit weaker tomorrow, and then possibly coming back later in the week. So this, down on the 12-hour level, assuming we don't open with anything crazy having happened, shorting off the 4-hour here is what I'd be looking at, and at least down. So again, this was slightly annoying and painfully threw me off because it didn't test here properly. And then there were a couple of hourlies through here. I was kept trying to get into this for a long, and there were a couple of hourlies through here that it didn't test properly either. And so I ended up managing to not get into that. From a liquidity perspective, we did take some liquidity from here, but again, it would have left some more under there. And I think that weekly, for it to come back to the moving average, is fairly high possibility as well. Who knows? I could be completely wrong about all this stuff, but these are my hypotheses as they stand today, assuming we don't. What would be sod's law is if we open up tomorrow with some massive gap, and I'm going to have to completely change all the hypotheses straight away. We did also leave some liquidity up here, and again, this was where it was slightly different too. So when we saw this bounce, and we saw that same bounce on the pound and on the euro, we saw this, the euro be the weakest, this be in between, and then the pound came up and took out these highs. So, and again, I've been analyzing this. I've been trying to say, I was trying to say to myself, what should or could have made me know that the pound was going to take the highs. So here, so you can see all the structures are basically the same. They all retrace together. They all came back for this. So this made a high and then came back for a double top. This did an initial double top, then came back, and actually this took out that high. This is where the pound did the double top, but then this time has come lower, whereas the pound has then taken out. And I guess that, I was trying to say to myself, well, what makes those structures different from each other? And the main thing I could come up with was that this hadn't hit this high time frame supply yet, whereas Aussie dollar had. This had hit weekly up here, and euro was the same. Euro had hit weekly, and again, you might remember from when I was analyzing back here and here, I think that I kept saying, like, there were a lot of people who were getting quite bearish at this point, and I can't remember what was there now to the left, but I was saying I thought it might go higher into the monthly, and as soon as it got up here, that's when I was starting to be quite bearish overall on these slash US dollar pairs. But I also commented that it made me nervous. So where's that 7th of January? That the pound, 4th, 6th, 7th, maybe around here, that the pound hadn't quite hit where it should hit. And ever since then, we've seen this creeping up higher, whereas the euro has dropped lower. So at this point in time, they were both there. Neither of them had hit. And then I wanted them to both go higher. Came higher, came higher. But ever since then, the euro against the dollar has been looking more bearish, whereas the pound is still getting stronger. And the Aussie dollar was still getting stronger, but not to the same extent as the pound. Oh, gosh. Brain melting from all the correlation. So yeah, that's the Aussie dollar. And similarly with this, and this was, so if you remember my comments on the euro pound, again, I've been sort of comparing. I'm wondering if this euro Aussie dollar is almost sort of ahead of the euro pound because of the Aussie dollar having hit what appears to be the top sooner. You'll see this mess of lines I've got down here, but that's literally, so we had, what I'd missed earlier on is that we had this 6-month, enormous admittedly with the stupid wick going all the way up from COVID, but we'd had this confirmed 6-month supply breakdown, and I was like trying to figure out why the Aussie dollar was being so bullish and this was being so bearish, and then because I hadn't looked at the 6-month chart, and this is why the benefit of looking at every single time frame. Like I could see this coming down, but at this point in time when we were in here, I was thinking, okay, well, we've had the the COVID deviation all the way up here. And I thought, well, maybe we've been in this range for so bloody long. We were here from 2019, kind of in this range. I figured we'd just kind of hang out here for a while, but no, we ended up breaking down quite quickly. And we've got a lot of monthly demand coming in, but there's so much chop here again, it's been really hard to tell, and that's hence why I've got so many lines here. So kind of ignore those, because that was really just me on the very low time frames looking at what wicks we had over here. And it turned, I've deleted actually, but it did turn out one of my upper green and orange. So these are just the tops and bottoms of the different demand zones we've got over to the left on the lower time frames, but they're not really what I would have traded, because they're just too on such a big drop like this, and when you're coming off a 6 monthly supply like that. But again, can this bounce? Because again, this needs to bounce in order for Aussie dollar, for this to then become bearish and fall down off here, or is this just a bull flag? I'm going to go higher, which is entirely possible. So these are sort of the things we're still looking at. This has come down into a weekly level, but again, I've shifted, it's a big weekly level, and I shifted it down, so it should run from this black line up here. But notice here that it has closed above the black line, above that weekly level. So yes, we did take quite deep wicks down into it, but we did close above. So supporting the case. So our next weekly supply is up here. You can see we've created a 3-day underneath, unless that's done something crazy with the weekly close like the pound did, which is entirely possible. But this has been very, very bearish for quite a long time now, and it just rejects every single supply. So I won't be overly bullish on this until I see it actually do something decent, because you see here, even here, it kind of borderline with the wicks, but it did kind of make a 3-day demand there, and it did kind of bounce off it, but very weakly, and then just broke it. And exactly the same here. It's just going up into the next supply and then coming down again. So I'm not overly bullish on this until I actually see some demand hold. And that's not really a significant level. So we're now on the second hit on this demand. So again, much like the euro pound, we're just kind of waiting to see if we can hold some of these new high time frames demand that we're building to be able to get some sort of significant retracement of this hideous down move. We would be looking at a rounded retest. So we had the local retest of this 6 month. Well, I don't know, it's still 6 months, it's still going to be on the same candle. So I was going to say we'd be looking at a rounded. So what you'll normally get when you get a breakdown like that, you'll get the immediate retest, and then you get a second retest later, both of which can reject quite happily. So I would still be looking for a short here if we came up into here, and then if not, 3-day or the weekly within this big 6 month area. But obviously that still gives us quite a lot of scope to go back up. So again, this week, looking for that possible drop down into these new demand areas for the bigger push up, which again coincides with the potential for the Aussie dollar to come up into one of the, maybe this 4-hour supply before a bigger drop down. Still looking kind of bull flaggish though, isn't it, on this? But I don't know, do we really like bull flags in FX? Probably not very much. Yeah, that's too clean a short for me to really ignore off that, and the fact it didn't actually hit this 4-hour down here. These are one of the other things I would look for in things like this, is when you've got a wick that falls just short or just below, if you're looking up on the upper side, a decent demand area, a swing failure into that 4-hour, swing failure of that low, taking liquidity and stops under that wick into the 4-hour is quite a high probability trade. I don't know how I can find kind of an example to show you. Can't see one in here. But yeah, and you know, whether it's a 4-hour, 1 hour or whatever, but when you see when it swing fails into a next untapped demand, or at the upside next untapped supply. They are quite high probability trades. So even actually if we came all the way down here, this came off the hourly here, but this 30-minute wasn't hit, but a swing failure off this into the 30-minute, high probability. Particularly if it happens in London or New York. Where am I? Actually, I'm thinking we might have got one. Maybe I can illustrate one on this. I'm not sure. I'd possibly have deleted it if that was the case anyway. But these are really, any swing failure into a high time frame supply or demand is what you really want to be trading as a new person. And euro pound is great for swing failures. So, you know, even off the top here, I'm not sure actually that quite hit. It might have been just short. Where are we? High 89.180 is exactly spot on. But yeah, when I very first started trading FX, this was a lot of what I traded. I literally would just enter blindly there with a stop just above, and if it comes up and takes me out, it comes up and takes me out. But more often than not, you get some sort of decent move, enough to be able to get your stop to break even. So here, and if it's done this, if it's rejected slightly earlier and then come back, all the better. But it's certainly enough to be able to kind of go, okay, my stop's at break even, and let's just see what happens. And then in this case, you would take it down to the 3-day, and it's had a perfect hit off the 3-day there. Getting 820. When did I start? 7? Can't remember. I do need to go over New Zealand dollar because yeah, this has been looking. I imagine I haven't looked at the Aussie New Zealand dollar for a while, so I imagine that's looking pretty much like death, because this has been, when I've looked at this, has generally looked a lot weaker than the Aussie dollar has against the US dollar. So I imagine the Aussie Kiwi dollar is looking pretty shit as well. But also this has come down a lot more cleanly. So again, you'll find with the Aussie and New Zealand dollar against the US dollar, they will go in the same direction, but again, the magnitudes may differ. So like we've got that bull flag that we just looked at on the Aussie dollar, but this is looking markedly less like a bull flag. The difference here though is this has come down into the weekly level, whereas the Aussie US hasn't. So this is what we were looking at. So it's got that ABCDE, but hasn't come down to this weekly level, whereas in contrast, this has got the ABCDE, but has come down to the weekly level, which, like I say, makes it slightly more challenging, because then this could potentially push for a bigger move up. Haven't traded this. This again has big spreads, so I much prefer to trade the Aussie dollar over the New Zealand dollar. It does have a much cleaner monthly level than the Aussie dollar has, however. And it also has come, oh yeah, sort of where the base is. I think there must be something in there. Yeah, so it's a 3-month support there where it's bounced. So again, why I put in some of the lines on top of the supply and demand. It's come off slightly above there. All right, all retested here, but that's why it's worth having these levels in, so you can sort of know, even if it's not a traditional supply or demand, where it may stop. Has the market opened? Why have we got a candle up there already? No, it's trading view throwing me off with a furphy. Yeah, no, it's 4:24 in Asia time, and it shouldn't open till 6. So I will need to do, probably outside of this stream, slightly more detailed analysis on this to kind of figure out. But here goes another nice example. So these are the other thing. This is another thing you want to look for, is when you've got really small, clean 4-hour or above candles like this. I don't think did swing fail. Might have done on that second hit. Yeah, so the second hit has done a 0.1 pip swing failure of it, but you can see it's a really small candle, and because some of the ones can be so massive like this and you'd end up with your stop miles away, small ones like this are worth watching because it's a very targeted area that where people, you know, in this case it's got a significant move away from there, so there's a lot of people who are trapped in there. There are a lot of stops going to be above here, hence why the swing failure is fairly likely. Yeah, but it's a nice clean trade with a stop just above, ignoring the fact you've got like a 4 pip. Your stop will be up here somewhere because I think you've got 4 pips on New Zealand dollar. So I have 4 pips on New Zealand dollar as far as spreads go. But again, you can have it because it's a small area. You can have quite a tight stop on it for a decent R trade, versus if you're trying to trade a big 4-hour kind of final, even like something like this is kind of a reasonable size 4-hour. Demand zone. In fact, that didn't even hit it, but your stop having to be all the way down here, unless you just watch it low time frame and try and get in on the low time frame. Didn't want to really look at the New Zealand. The last thing I wanted to look actually is the dollar Swiss franc, which is interesting. I did try and short this, and then I got bored waiting for it, so I came out, and it has gone where I can't remember where I shorted. I might have shorted it in here, and I think it was just taking so damn long that I just wasn't 100% convinced. So the other thing is always worth looking at because it's going to kind of match what Dexy wants to do. So this nice clean monthly demand with this ginormous big crazy fuck off 2015 wick into it. A nice clean monthly supply that if we get back up there you should be shorting, and then on the lower time frames, so we've got the 2 weekly, which again is clean, hasn't been hit, so you'd be looking short here and short, so 9.9 and 0.903 if we get back to either of those levels. At the moment, just in this kind of tight range, we've had a really clean bounce. I think off there'll be some sort of daily down there within the monthly. Come on. But again, because of this big giant wick through it, I haven't been very comfortable trading these. Oh no, the giant wick actually had, I think this is a 2-day. So again, it's being conscious of all the time frames, and the cleanest ones are the ones that are most likely to work. So again, really nice clean 2-day there. You've got a wick just there for it to take liquidity underneath that wick, if there is any. I'm slightly dubious about the whole liquidity theory, but I kind of keep an eye on it anyway. And this has really nicely just popped off the top of that, and straight back up into this daily supply up here, and then we've had a few hits to it, nice swing failure, and then that drop, and again back into, so much like the dollar yen, dollar CAD, and Dexy, are we going to bounce? And this actually, well, this is more bearish, isn't it? So the dollar yen has had more of a bounce, on Thursday and Friday. Dollar CAD is the same, isn't it? Computer's slowing down a bit. How has my chart layout changed? Somebody hacking my charts. This had a much more significant move off that support, whereas dollar Swiss franc, admittedly dollar Swiss franc didn't retrace as much as the others. So dollar yen, actually no, dollar yen didn't retrace as much, but dollar CAD at least did come, didn't I just delete that? Dollar CAD did come much lower. It made new lows. Dollar yen, didn't quite come back to that daily that I wanted it to down here. Dollar Swiss franc has hit that daily, but hasn't really had a significant bounce off it compared to the others. So that's looking a bit weaker in general. And I think I've, again, I haven't followed these long enough, but I think people talk about this following the DXY, maybe a little more than the other two do, because I think the Swiss franc is such a neutral currency, whereas the CAD has just been getting stronger in general across the board, and the yen has, I think, yen's a bit more mixed across all currencies. But here, yeah, we've got an indirect daily, but too big really to be tradable for me. And again, I don't normally trade Swiss franc unless I see something decent off it, and I would have traded that swing failure if I'd seen it, but I think I might have been in here, I'm not sure, but like I say, I just got too bored waiting for it, so I think I just came out of that, and it was only a small position anyway because it's not something I'm particularly familiar with, and again, the spreads aren't great, but if you see a low time frame, okay, let me think. So my hypothesis of the /US dollar pairs going up a bit would mean this is going to come down a bit potentially, but that means dollar yen and dollar CAD, yeah, they looked like they might come down a bit, didn't they? So have these come down for a bit more of a retest before a bigger move up? Yeah, I can't remember, sorry, I might have got distracted when I was saying that. This dollar yen is just making such a huge amount of liquidity. So all my orange lines, double top here, there's a double top with a local one there, and when this does bounce, it's likely to get a fairly significant bounce because of the method it's come down. It's not taking any liquidity. It's not what you want to see if it's not going to go back up again is for it to, to retrace. When it does the retrace, is to take liquidity before the bigger drop, and then retrace and then take liquidity off here, but it's not doing that. So at some stage when this bounces, it's probably going to bounce quite hard because there's going to be so much liquidity to take above all these double tops and highs that it's left in this massive down move. So yeah, in contrast, you can see each of these is taking liquidity from the one before because obviously we're in a downtrend. But once we do start making that move up, we're probably going to get quite a decent move out of it, and hence why we should be watching for it. When I look at that structure, I do quite like that for a move up on the yen over and above the others anyway. This is slightly less bullish than the dollar yen. So, sorry, not bullish, obviously they're all bearish, but slightly less reversal like than the dollar yen. So we could still see something of a move lower from these guys before a second try at those highs. It's kind of what I'm thinking. Hopefully I'm not completely and utterly wrong, but trade what you see, trade if there's a supply or demand, trade it. It's that simple. Don't get scared. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I mean, you'll see. I hope you can see, like from me going through the charts, is yeah, some fail, but if they fail, they fail, and you're in and out. Whereas I do think the probabilities on the high time frame ones and the ones at the start and the start and the end of waves are high probability. Yeah, sorry, maybe before I finish, I will do a quick look at the DXY and the SPX. So these are annoying me because I like to trade reversals, and yeah, I keep looking for reversals, which is kind of foolish in this massive bullish uptrend that we've got going on here. SPX had a breakout, and this one I was okay with. Actually, I did short up here, and I think I exited around here again because I couldn't really watch it, and then I was subsequently glad I did. If this hadn't happened on Friday, I would have been shorting in this 4 hour for sure. The other issue I had, So again, when comparing, so not something I've been trading for long enough to say I'm massively familiar with it, but typically the Wall Street, which is the DJI Dow Jones, follows the SPX. Or they follow each other, they sort of basically are doing the same thing. What we have on the Dow Jones though is that it didn't take out the highs. So whereas the SPX made a new high, this actually did a swing failure. And this is another one that pissed me off last week. But this, when I say these things piss me off, it's mainly because I haven't been able to concentrate on trading because I've had other stuff going on. I shorted here when it came back below, and I got it on the second one. No, wait, I got it here. So it had done 3 hits to the high, so I was quite comfortable with my short. And then bloody New York did a second. So New York here, oh no, this was London, 4 o'clock. This is London. Had taken out the highs. Oh, and maybe it was the third. No, I think it was even this one. Like, I don't know. I think I got knocked out once and I went back in again. And I think I might have gone back in here and again put my stop to break even because I couldn't monitor it. And then New York came back again for a stop hunt and knocked me out of it. And then I think I did see it here and was then, but I was like, oh, I was unfocused and I didn't really want to trade the start of Asia. So like at this point in time, so at 5 o'clock in the morning, Asia time, or 5:15, the market will close 15 minutes. For some random reason that I have no idea. So you'll see that if you look at the times, you can see that it's 5 o'clock and then goes to 5:30 because there's a 15-minute candle that's missing. It then closes for an hour from 6 till 7. And again, I just don't really like trading in that time because they're widening spreads, and also Asia can do some crazy stuff when it wants to. So again, I didn't get back into this, and then then I tend to go to bed around this time, and then I think wake up around here pissed off. So so yeah, this irritated me a little bit, but I did manage to get a short on the SPX, which made me happy. This SPX has come back up, like I said, to test that 4-hour level, but ideally I would have wanted the Dow Jones to come back up and test the 4-hour level as well, which it hasn't. It came up only to the hourly, and again it was the end of Friday on the swing failure, so I left that alone. I kind of still feel, because the Dow Jones didn't break out, yes, it's in kind of a giant range up here now, but because it didn't break out and did the swing failure, I was hoping to get a bigger drop now off this. We came off the 4-hour, which is not surprising, but I would have liked again for this to have tested, or I would like to short a test of this against the 4-hour before potentially a drop back, at least back down to this 4-hour or even lower, because I do feel like at some stage, so when we're talking about retracing candles, at some stage I do think we're going to have to retrace this candle. And when I was looking back at the price action on this, and we do tend to retrace the whole, while this is in a consistent uptrend, if we do make a significant move up, except for this one, this is the only other one we haven't tested. And again, I think I was shorting in here, didn't hold it the whole way down by any stretch of the imagination, but again I thought we might go lower, but then we ended up with this massive pump, which was like I think the last thing on a Friday afternoon or some really kind of random time that was just a bit odd. But yeah, I'm kind of looking for a retracement of that candle, so I'm looking for when it's going to show me up here that might happen. It would have been nice if this had hit the 4-hour at the same time. Frozen computer. It's time for a cigarette. Held off long enough. Open the door. Yeah, it would have been nice if this Dow Jones had tested the 4-hour. And again, so it's back to that correlation stuff that I always look at. I keep these guys and the DXY on the same layout. Typically, they do the opposite to the DXY, but not always. It's not reliable. And you'll sometimes find these, the euro US dollar will drop and these will drop together, and other times they won't. But it's not something that's consistent. But what they do tend to do consistently is reject, or these both tend to follow the same patterns, even if in this case the SPX broke out whereas the DJI didn't. They were both still going up this got a bigger retracement in the middle here than that did, but they still both typically go up at the same time. So while I still want, again, a bigger retracement, and the SPX is the same, it's got this big candle that hasn't retraced yet, and this nice 4 hour on the bottom. I would like to see a move down to there. Whether it's ready is another matter. And then also, like I said, this wick down here at some stage, I feel like we're going to want to retrace that wick. And I was hoping it was going to be through here because we had this consolidation and then we started the drop, and I was hoping we'd get the retrace and a drop further, and did try to short in here. Did get an okay short, but it just bounced off the nearest 4 hour and continued up. Yeah, I'm still, even though this is clearly a big uptrend, I'm still a bit loath to long it before it's done yet another bigger retracement and taken out some of these candles, these big candles that it's kind of done moves up. But then on Friday, I was looking back at some of this history, and again, just trying to get a sense of what it can do. Also, you know, it has, like here, it did make some of these, you know, it was retracing them, but then it was doing additional ones. And then it did take, you know, this is July last year, it did take, you know, the COVID dump. Or am I actually, I'm a year behind? No, this is the COVID dump. You know, it still has got some significant moves here that haven't fully retraced, so there is no real, this must retrace these candles rule by any stretch of the imagination. But I always like to watch for the bigger moves, because if you can get that confirmation, if you get the, you know, when you're, this one, I remember I was talking about this one, I think in premium, this was a sort of a bit of a no-brainer because it had come up on Friday, and it was also New Year. And then on the Monday, it just pushed higher and then just this big dump off. But again, I didn't expect the big drop off. In hindsight, looking at it, I could have seen that demand was quite unclear. And I can't remember exactly where I came out of this, but I'm only just learning to trade the SPX and the DXY, and I find them quite hard, because if you get it right, you'll get an amazing trade. But they can also move extremely fast, so it's intensely irritating when you're suddenly in really good profit. And like I said, on when it was doing this up here, I forget sometimes, it's my same feeling as anybody else, like what time frame are you trading? Like while I was treating this as, because the DJI had done a swing failure, I was treating like this as a possible top on both SPX and DJI, even though this was a breakout. It's quite frustrating when you've got quite a large position because you've got such a tight stop, and it comes down to here and you're in decent profit, and then it comes back and you're virtually at break even again a few hours later. And then again, same here. And this one I did hold on to, and I think I came out around there again because I couldn't really watch it. But again, timing wasn't great on this, but I would have shorted this 4 hour if I'd caught that. So I'll be watching. That's kind of what I'm going to watch first thing this morning anyway, just to see if we get any sort of gap on this, and also the possibility that this might push up on Monday into a double top before that drop. But this is, the SPX is still a kind of bullish breakout. This is only based really on the fact that this has done a swing failure off the highs, but that still doesn't mean it's going to drop further. But yeah, just again, those structures, the way I'm looking at this, because this has happened on Friday, the possibility of this going to a double top with this going up to the 4 hour is quite high. So when this does that move, I'd be looking at the same time. And you've got to see, like, I'm not predicting that either of these things are going to happen. It might just drop. But if it happens, I'd be looking for that to take out liquidity on a swing failure at the same time as this hits 4 hour supply here. And if those two things happen together, and if they happen in New York, or even in Asia, but not really London. Like this doesn't really do very fun things in London normally. But if those two things happen together, then I'd be happy to take a short on either or both. And finally, I shall look at gold because this is doing my head in. So if anybody wants to put their own analysis in the Forex channel and tell me their thoughts, that would be awesome. And I put something very vague in there. I'm interested to see what Tony thinks because he's sort of, so we've come here off this moving average. We also had monthly level here. So we had this decent bounce off there, unsurprisingly, and then we came up and we had a 2-week level. There's a 2-week, and we came virtually to the top of the 2-week up here before that bigger drop. So both of those things were quite easily predictable and they were fine. Then now we have a weekly indirect here. I can maybe put the lines back on. So we had a weekly indirect here, and this wick didn't quite come up to there. Just below that, we had a 3-day indirect, and I did short there, and that was when I put my confusion about whether to hold it in the Forex channel. So again, yeah, overarchingly, and maybe this is just all back down to the DXY being indecisive. So you can see we've also got a 3-week indirect demand here. So I was like, is this now going to become bullish and push for another move up, or are we still in this kind of bearish, flaggy down channel thing? There is still, I think, a distinct possibility we go down to the 1730s. And this weekly level, we did bounce on a 3-day here, but again, we're coming off a 2-week. We've got, we've gone up to the $2,000 mark. It's probably heavily overextended on the gold front, so maybe it does need a bit more of a retracement or a double bottom. But again, it's things on both sides. This was, if you remember when I was analyzing it back here, I actually wanted this to come down to test this daily level here, and we never got that test there before that move up, but we did get that test here. And it was again on a massive wick, and I think it happened some random time. Yeah, it was in Asia that I wasn't watching at 6 o'clock in the morning, and huge bounce off there. So yeah, I didn't get any longs through here, and there was I think some 4-hour. There was a 4-hour here that failed to be a decent supply, but again a bit of choppiness on this. And also coming off the daily. So we did push all the way up to the 3-day again. Would have been nicer if we gone to the weekly slightly higher, but I did, short off there. And I came out 18.52 again because I was unsure and didn't want to watch it. And we had this big daily. But as I was saying before, we do retrace these big wicky candles eventually normally. So we did end up going down here, but then we also did have a significant bounce again on Friday, which again, I wasn't trading. So now, bit like TJI, haven't quite hit where I would potentially want to short off supply again, and I'm still very on the fence with this as to whether I should be bullish or bearish. And it's if you look at that structure again, it's not dissimilar to what we're looking at on dollar Swiss franc and dollar yen. It's that kind of lopsided inverse head and shoulders. Is it gonna? So this is when we've done the lower low, we've broken out, we've taken out the last move down. And then we're looking at the retest. So on all of these, so this we've got to the daily retest level, the dollar Swiss franc we've got to the daily retest level, the dollar yen we haven't quite. So they're all in just that kind of will they won't they are these reversals kind of scenarios. So again, I want to see a little bit more of this, but this is an 8-hour level. But yeah, so we've made that higher high. We've come back for the retest. So this could feasibly again push up to the weekly level before dropping again. Or we could just get this retested, this 8-hour level and that drop. So these are all things I'm going to be looking for tomorrow. And this, again, doesn't always follow the same pattern as these guys, but is quite similar on the micro, as in like a red candle will equate to another red candle, it just may be bigger or smaller. So again, like the logic of potentially these following that going for the double top, this going for the 4-hour, this going for the 8-hour, and then all having a bigger move down is possible. So that would mean, if that's the case, that would mean US dollar gets a little bit weaker in the first instance, which might push that down to the 3-day here, which I think tallies with most of the other things I've commented, that the US dollar is going to get a little bit weaker. Same here, come back for a retest before a potential move up. We shall see what happens tomorrow. Anybody have any questions? Is there anybody still listening, or are you all just bored? Concurrent viewers, 6. So I managed to keep 6 of you entertained for some period of time anyway. If no one has any questions, I will sign off. Apart from the fact I just opened the door and freezing myself to death, and I was going to smoke a cigarette and I haven't even smoked it yet. Anybody want me to look at anything? What's Bitcoin doing in my absence? I managed to not look at it for a little while. Okay, another bit more of a drop. Not terribly surprising. Ether. It's hit a kind of a resistancy level that is fairly weak, but is basically a breakout. This is, yeah, this it's my highly technical analysis here. This sort of triangle curve distribution pattern is quite common, so I was wondering if we were going to get a similar one here on Ether. But when I was drawing that, I hadn't actually noticed that this had, I knew this was going up, but I hadn't actually noticed that this had broken the previous high and had flipped it, which is why we got that bigger move up there. And you know, these levels aren't levels I consider particularly significant, but you never know, so I always like to watch them. But I wouldn't have been particularly bearish on Ether if I'd noticed this flip. And we also had a flip. I wasn't quite on the monthly, but there's a monthly. I know there was a monthly level. I just haven't been analysing this because, as you know, I've been off kind of doing this for a little while. We had a flip off an unconfirmed monthly level down here, which again I hadn't noticed until earlier today. But we're looking like we might get a little retracement on this now anyway, because it has had a fairly significant move today. On Ether though, what really makes me a bit more bearish than other people, I think, is the grayscale. And you know, I possibly shouldn't be, because we did have, so back in May 2020, so we were kind of following here, but at this June 2020, what happened in June 2020? Not much. We really started this big retracement down here that never actually happened, that on grayscale, that never actually happened, or not really significantly. We didn't, like, we were just falling here while the Ethereum price itself was kind of going up, and then we did get a bit of a fall, but nothing as significant in percentage terms as the grayscale, which basically went near enough back to ground zero. Grayscale then started pushing up from there. And then again, we've got this sort of deflection in prices since Christmas, really. So since Christmas, grayscale Ether's been pretty much dropping, barring some mini waves. We might be making start to make like little higher lows here, but we certainly haven't got this significant move on the 1st of January that Ether has had in grayscale. So I'm a little bit more skeptical. But like I say, you know, it's not like we have perfect correlation here where they both kind of fell together, or grayscale was a leading indicator for, it might have been a bit of a leading indicator, because like you can argue that that was the true high on the Ethereum price, and these couple of hits above were just stop hunting fuckery before we then came back down to accumulation, and while grayscale dropped and then went back into the accumulation itself. So arguably, but then that doesn't necessarily follow now. So I don't know, we don't have enough price history, nor have I done enough back testing to really know how valid it is to kind of treat grayscale. We do know that I think I saw somebody else post that grayscale had some Ether. Maybe I should check actually. Let me find the website. There we go. Try and drag it over. I think we had some Ether sales that we hadn't had previously from Grayscale, or for a while. So yeah, some small, I guess in the grand scheme that's probably not very big selling at all. This is thousands. I've got a feeling this is no, that's thousands. This is millions, and maybe it is significant. I don't know. I'd have to work out the numbers to know whether that's just significant. Is it that 1.406 million Ether or 1.406? Do you hold crypto at the moment? Any crypto? No, I do not. I've kind of moved on to more trading FX myself, and also some futures, which involves holding US dollars Tether. But I don't know, like I think I was just around in the bear market a little bit too long, and I watched, like my learnings when in 2017, like I watched my profits go from very, very good to really, really quite shit, and I think I've just got PTSD from that, and I don't trust it to hold it, even though you've got, like Megalastus or whatever he is in my channel, he likes to say, it's going to 100k or a million or whatever it's going to. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, I don't know, but I just don't trust anything. So I'd much rather be a scalper, and I'm just not good at, I'm too impatient, and I'm not good at sleeping on stuff. So to trade a swing trade, I mean, if Bitcoin dropped onto a weekly level, I'd be more comfortable, and bounced off a weekly demand, and I bought there, then I'd probably be more comfortable holding it now. At least now we've broken all-time high and shown we can go higher. But to buy it now as a spot trade, I just think it's absurd. I'm rightly or wrongly, I'm not that's not financial advice for anybody else whatsoever, because God, it might be 100 million, 100,000 or a million in a couple of years' time, and I will regret that. But personally, I would rather be a trader than an investor, because I just haven't got the patience to wait for, I look at people on Facebook and they say, there's people going, oh, I've just got this money, should I buy Bitcoin now? And people going, yes, and then you can just DCA if the price drops, no problem. And I'm like, what if it drops to 1k? And it's like people seem to have forgotten that's even a possibility now. Or maybe it's me who's the fool, I don't know. But frankly, I'd just rather not personally take that risk. Okay, yeah, anyway, so we've got some Ether sales here, however much they are. I'm not sure if they're in thousands. I assume they can't be in millions, because it's 2.93 that they hold, so they can't have sold 1.406 million, but they might have sold 1.4 million, which then would be a fairly significant amount. If it's 1.406 Ether, then it's really not very much at all. So I'm not 100% sure about that. Let me actually maybe I'll look at the chart, might make life easier. So the Ether price and total, yeah, so they haven't really sold very much at all, but they have sold a little bit. Still 2.93 million. But more to the point, this is the first time they haven't actually bought on that 7-day change, which is interesting in itself. ETC, they were selling a bit of that before, and now seem to have got back into buying again. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I just think it's of note and worth watching that, while we still see Grayscale price history build up, and a lot, there's a lot of people who are advocates of Grayscale kind of driving a lot of this because of their institutional buying. Yeah, I think it's kind of worth considering what their price is doing. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about the technicalities of their product, and I kind of haven't really had the inclination to go and find out, although I probably should at some stage. But Bitcoin is still, for the most part, following, but Ether not so much. But as I say, it's done it in the past. So this CME closed at around CME for finally has no longer has a premium, and it closed at around 33,290, and the prices were really quite similar. I can't remember what the difference was. So we, if we're going to end up with a gap up here in the next few hours, we're likely to see probably some move up at least in the next couple of days to fill a gap. And at this point, I've been tending towards the bearish, and I've been, calling shorts throughout a lot of this PA. We now have a 3-day supply confirmed. We haven't quite hit it, but I did call another short regardless lower, because so my initial shorts were kind of up here. I think I've got one up on this 2-day and one just inside the 3-day here, which didn't get hit. But again, it becomes a bit too obvious, and I saw far too many people were trying to call a short off this 12-hour. And again, once it becomes too obvious, I then don't want to trade it myself, or I think it's either going to get overshot or it's going to front run. So I actually might remove the short that I have in there now, because we've consolidated too long now without testing it. So if it does come here, it's likely to go through there, and then maybe we'll get the short a bit higher on this daily or 2-day level up here. Or alternatively, it's just been front run and we're just going to drop off here. So I did call a late risky short. Ether late short's doing all right. So I had a short in there from earlier. I may or may not need to revise this long entry down here, but yeah, because in the absence of the upper shorts getting hit, I think we also had a short in here eventually. Maybe not, I can't recall now. But yeah, didn't hit this 12-hour level, and again, once everybody else is looking at it, it will either overshoot or it won't hit, and in this case it didn't hit. Ether, I had one stop. Like I said, I put these in before really noticing what Ether Bitcoin was doing, and because I'm not officially working at the moment. I did have a short from yesterday that would have got stopped out down here. Did get a minuscule reaction for a couple or an hour or so, but then came up while I was sleeping, and then I threw that one in there without really checking what Ether Bitcoin was doing, but has had an okay reaction back for the retest. But I haven't updated this obviously since I'm doing the stream, but that has had a better reaction than I expected initially, given it was just on a 15-minute level. I thought it was worth a try, but yeah, I'm back down to the start of this. Nothing too exciting on those. It's just weekends is just low time frame scalping really. Most weekends recently we've had a lot of this. Sometimes Sunday around I think it's even nowish we tend to go. No, earlier, a few hours ago, we would have got a bigger move on the Sunday, but this week not. It's been messing around between low time frames. So it really, again, weekends from a supply demand perspective are quite safe to trade, or have been again recently. They go through phases, but again, you see here there's an hourly demand, got a clean bounce off that, made another hourly, another bounce off that, rejected off the hourly supply. At the top end, you don't need to hold these, you can just scalp them, take them for a couple, you've got enough volatility now to take them for a couple of $100 and get out. Yep. So, but yeah, I mean, overarchingly, I kind of wanted to be, I am more bearish on Bitcoin now because of this 3-day. But I also know Bitcoin can be an arse if it wants to, and it can probably potentially, where is my brush again? It can, if it makes enough support here and it is hanging out here for long enough, we could potentially go up before dropping and go straight through the 3-day, and particularly because we've made a double top here. So again, on the swing failure front, set yourself an alert for this double top at 37969, and 38225 is a level I've had. I don't know why I've got a line there. It's a level I've had for quite a long time. Is there a weekly level there? Because it's in black, it should be a weekly. Okay, that was a weekly top. But 38225 is actually a level I wanted retested and had a short entry at for ages, and we never got there with these two double tops. But it is very possible we're going to come back up there, swing fail those two, take stops above there, and then do the drop. but I am still, I think, relatively bearish on expecting a bigger retracement on this. I believe there's my 3-day. So my 3-day top will be up here. So that's still, well, I mean, not to go all the way up there, but if we went up 38225, we would still be within that 3-day retest zone before that potential bigger move down. But again, yeah, just watch the channel. Center line is a bit mean, but sort of working a bit as support. But yeah, just watch the channel. And also the other thing is, if we do break up through this channel, and certainly if we come up here, there'll be people breakout trading, there'll be people trading the breakout of the channel, but versus trading the breakout of this level, which if we talk about maximum pain scenario is very possible that we just go up and then dump from there. So or we just break out and go higher, who knows. Can only trade, but I mean, for me, the probabilities, the risk to reward on going to the moon from here is not as really as good as on what we could get out of a short if a short does work. Let me just have a look at what the indicators are doing. Okay, so yeah, the dailies retraced quite a lot, although it isn't back down in the oversold area. It doesn't have to get there. 3-day, if we can actually get a decent 3-day move on the candle, we'll have hidden bullish divergence, but we can see we've got a weakening of the trend on the ADX and a possible crossover. Interesting on to look at the 3-day in the next couple of days, or when the next candle closes. Let's look at the weekly. So the weekly is obviously very overbought and dropping off, but then obviously we've got heaps of overbought and dropping off over here. But normally, at least, yes, while we can keep going, and it doesn't necessarily mean the price is going to go to hell from overbought RSI, we are normally, if we look at history, seeing 2 or 3 red candles at the point it gets to that high. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go down to 10k or whatever, but it does typically mean we're going to see some sort of couple of red candles, which we've got, to be fair. So yeah, pretty much what we expect to see. My concern with this is that we just haven't gone to any decent demand zone yet. So, well, we've got this daily and we are still holding the daily, so I guess that's good. But actually now I look at it like that, we have rejected off the top of that daily level. So it's still looking rather short-like to me, but also it's also drift of deathing, and we're so used to Bitcoin when just doing a significant drop like that and crawling back up. I don't really like drift of death, because that sort of means it's kind of got more support than I like, and then it could turn around at any time. But I'm still looking for, while we're still creating these supplies, so we had this 4-hour in here, and we could have taken a short off that 4-hour earlier. And we're now hitting, okay, so we've come close to hitting that 4-hour off the lows. So this is kind of really the critical moment of truth, is are we going to get any sort of significant reaction off this 4-hour? And so far, not massively, but let's see if we can break this wave. Don't know, it's Sunday. It's really hard to know until CME opens and it sort of figures out what it's going to do. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap up there unless anybody else has any questions. Let me know. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. Okay. I will say thank you and good night. Feel free to ask me any questions in the channel, and if you disagree with anything I say, feel free to dispute me, because I love that, and that's not being sarcastic. I do actually really enjoy people having a different opinion to me, and that's why I said earlier, when I was kind of giving those examples of you know, people doing these sort of like this is going to break all support, break all resistance lines that they do on the FX charts, when I kind of wonder if there's something they know that I don't. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I really would quite like to actually talk to them to debate it, because I'd like to know why they assume that we're going to break out or not. No thanks. John says no thank. I can't remember what the question was now. No other questions. No thanks. Link, being my barometer of death, is still holding quite nicely, but this is what I watch for knowing what Bitcoin's going to do, because typically I have found Link and ADA have in the past given me nice indications. ADA's been looking a bit death-like. Now, actually, if I'd been more on the ball, I would have been shorting this, but it's now at a point that I'm kind of less sure because it's made this 4 hour. But ADA's interesting and worth watching because we do have a swing failure off the all-time high on the US dollar chart. So if you start to see this 3-day breakdown, which we kind of already have as we come into the middle of it, we've also got this daily. So that was the short I wanted earlier today off the daily. If you see this daily close underneath, which is getting there now, so I had the blue line in earlier, this to me is quite a nice short, whilst just being conscious and careful of the fact we have quite a clean 4 hour here, which is going to bounce. It's just a question of what supply it's got to fight against at the point it gets to that 4 hour. But I am pushing to the bear side on ADA and Litecoin and Bcash as well. These are a lot more bearish to me than what Ether's doing. And I don't know if Ether's just off doing its own thing now. It looks like it's bounced more since I looked at that chart a minute ago. That's just coming up for the retest now. I'll do more analysis on that in a minute. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I hope that was of some use, and I will hopefully do another stream soon.